The crystal champagne flute shattered across the marble floor just as my name echoed through the grand ballroom. Daniel Hart is nothing but a stepping stone. The silence that followed was worse than the laughter. Every guest at the engagement banquet turned toward the stage where Vanessa Sterling stood beneath a chandelier worth more than most people's homes. She wore the diamond ring I had chosen with my own hands, yet her fingers were wrapped around someone else's arm. Ethan, the chauffeur's daughter, Lily Carter, stood only a few feet away, dressed in an elegant silver gown that looked painfully out of place on her trembling frame. Tears glistened in her eyes as she stared at me, silently begging me to say something. In my previous life, I had walked toward Lily, because everyone believed she loved me, because everyone insisted Vanessa only wanted my family's wealth, because I believed sacrifice made me noble. I broke off my engagement in front of everyone and chose Lily. 3 years later, Lily emptied my accounts, stole confidential company files, and disappeared overseas with another man after helping my Uncle C's heart group. Vanessa, the woman I had abandoned, spent everything she owned trying to save me from bankruptcy. She died shielding me from a truck whose brakes had been tampered with. Her last words still carved through my soul. If only you had trusted me once. Darkness, regret, pain. Then, I opened my eyes, standing once again inside the Sterling Hotel ballroom. The same chandelier, the same music, the same engagement banquet, the same choice. A second life, a second chance. My heartbeat thundered so loudly I barely heard Lily whisper, "Daniel, please, don't leave me alone." The room waited. So did fate. Vanessa's cold eyes met mine across the stage. Last time, I saw arrogance in them. Now, I saw exhaustion, as if she had already accepted losing me before I even made my decision. I slowly walked forward. Lily's fingers brushed my sleeve. "Daniel." I gently removed her hand. "I'm sorry." Her face turned pale. The guests leaned forward. Vanessa narrowed her eyes. I stopped in front of her. Without saying a word, I took the engagement ring from the velvet box the host still held. Then I knelt. Gasps exploded across the ballroom. Vanessa Sterling. My voice remained steady despite the storm inside me. "If you'll still have me, I choose you." For the first time since I had known her, the woman famous for never showing emotion looked genuinely stunned. Her lips parted. "You?" She searched my face. "Are serious?" "I am." Someone in the crowd whispered. "Didn't everyone say he loved the driver's daughter?" Another voice replied. "What just happened?" Lily staggered backward. "No." She shook her head frantically. "No, Daniel. That's not how this is supposed to happen." Those words froze my blood. Supposed to happen? A flicker of panic crossed her face before she forced tears into her eyes. "You promised me." "I never did." "You said you'd protect me forever." "I said I'd help you build your own future." I looked at her quietly. "Those aren't the same thing." Her breathing became uneven. Vanessa finally extended her hand. "If you're playing games." "I'm not." She studied me for several long seconds before allowing me to slide the ring onto her finger. The applause came hesitantly. No one understood what had just happened. Neither did Lily. She suddenly rushed toward us. "You can't marry her." Security instinctively moved. She pointed at Vanessa. "She only wants your company." The accusation sounded hauntingly familiar. Exactly the words she had planted in my mind during my first life. Vanessa didn't defend herself. She simply looked at me, waiting, testing. I smiled faintly. If she wanted Heart Group, I intertwined our hands. She wouldn't have spent years building Sterling Capital. The ballroom fell silent again. Only I knew why those words mattered. Because in another lifetime, she had already proven it. Lily's expression cracked. Something inside her carefully constructed confidence began collapsing. For the first time, the future no longer belonged to her. The banquet ended earlier than expected. Reporters flooded the hotel entrance. Camera flashes exploded like lightning. "Mr. Hart, why the sudden decision?" "Miss Sterling, were the breakup rumors false?" "Who is Miss Carter to you?" Vanessa answered none of them. She simply walked beside me. When the limousine door closed, silence settled between us. She didn't look at me. "You've changed." "I know. You used to avoid being alone with me." I was foolish. Her eyes finally met mine. "That's an unusually honest answer." I smiled bitterly. "If I told you I regretted years of misunderstanding, would you believe me?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked out the window as city lights reflected across the glass. "I don't know what happened today, Her voice was soft. But I hope you don't regret it tomorrow. I won't. Not this lifetime. Never again. She nodded once. Nothing more. Yet somehow, that tiny gesture felt harder to earn than any business victory. When the limousine stopped outside the Hart family estate, my phone vibrated continuously. Mother, father, board members, friends, even my uncle. Everyone wanted an explanation. Only one message mattered. From an unknown number. You ruined everything. You'll pay for changing your decision. I stared at the screen. My fingers tightened. Exactly the same wording. Someone had sent me 3 days before my death in my previous life. The message disappeared almost as quickly as it arrived. When I tried calling the number, it no longer existed. A disposable SIM. Just like before. A chill crawled down my spine. In my previous life, I had dismissed the threat as the work of an angry internet troll. 3 days later, the brakes on Vanessa's car had failed. This time, I refused to ignore the warning. As I stepped into the Hart estate, the familiar scent of cedar and polished wood struck me with an almost painful sense of déjà vu. My father stood in the main hall, his face dark with restrained anger. What exactly were you thinking? Before I could answer, my mother hurried over. Ignore your father's tone, she said, though worry clouded her eyes. Daniel, everyone is saying you humiliated the Carter girl. I didn't humiliate anyone. Father folded his arms. You spent months insisting you wanted to cancel the engagement. Then today you publicly proposed to Vanessa. Explain. See, I held his gaze. I realized I was about to make the biggest mistake of my life. His expression hardened. That's not an explanation. No, it isn't. Because the truth was impossible. How could I tell them I'd watched my fiancée die in my arms after I abandoned her? That I had buried my own future because I trusted the wrong person? Instead, I said quietly, I've been manipulated. Mother's eyes widened. By whom? I don't know yet. That much was true. In my previous life, I had blamed Lily alone. Now, the anonymous message suggested someone else had been pulling strings from the shadows. Father remained silent for a long moment before speaking. If you're serious about Vanessa, I am. Then stop acting like a confused boy. His voice softened almost imperceptibly. Be the man worthy of standing beside her. After he walked away, Mother squeezed my shoulder. I've always liked Vanessa. She smiled sadly. I was beginning to think you'd forgotten how kind she really was. Kind. Most people described Vanessa Sterling as cold, calculating, impossible to read. Only a handful had ever seen the woman who secretly funded scholarships, paid employees' medical bills without announcing it, and visited orphanages without inviting the press. I hadn't seen her. Not until it was too late. The following morning, I arrived at Hart Group headquarters before sunrise. The executive floor buzzed with whispers the moment I stepped out of the elevator. They say Mr. Hart dumped the driver's daughter overnight. No, they say Miss Sterling forced him. I heard the Sterling family threatened him. Rumors spread faster than stock prices. I ignored every one of them. As I entered my office, my assistant, Mason Reed, stood immediately. You've got 12 missed meetings. I know. And he hesitated. Miss Carter has been waiting downstairs for nearly 2 hours. Of course she had. Don't send her up. He blinked. Sir, if she doesn't have an appointment, she doesn't come in. A year ago, I would have canceled my entire schedule for her. Today, business came first. Mason nodded slowly. I'll handle it. An hour later, voices erupted outside the office. Daniel. The door burst open before security could stop her. Lily rushed inside, breathing heavily. You won't even see me now? Her mascara had run slightly, making her look more fragile than usual. In my previous life, that expression had unraveled every defense I possessed. Now I noticed something different. She wasn't heartbroken. She was desperate. Leave us, I told security. Once the room emptied, Lily slammed both hands onto my desk. Why? Why what? You were supposed to choose me. Again. That strange phrase. Supposed to. I leaned back. Who told you that? Her face stiffened. What? You keep saying I was supposed to choose you. She looked away for a fraction of a second. Because everyone knew you would. No. I watched every flicker in her expression. That's not what you meant. For the first time since entering the room, genuine panic flashed across her eyes. She quickly recovered, forcing tears to spill. I've loved you for years. If that's true, I folded my hands. Why were you secretly meeting my uncle last month? Silence. Her pupils contracted. You followed me? I asked a question. She took a step back. I only met him once. Interesting. I had never mentioned how many times. A trap. Once she had walked into herself. I see. The color drained from her face as she realized her mistake. Before she could explain, my office phone rang. Mason's voice came through immediately. Mr. Hart. Miss Sterling is here. Lily froze. Outside the glass wall, I saw Vanessa walking toward my office with calm, measured steps, completely unaware that the pieces of a much larger game had already begun moving. Her arrival interrupted the confrontation at the exact moment Lily's carefully built mask started to crack. Vanessa paused outside the glass door just long enough to exchange a polite nod with Mason before stepping into my office. Her charcoal gray suit was impeccably tailored, her long dark hair tied neatly behind her shoulders. Nothing about her appearance suggested uncertainty, yet her eyes immediately moved from me to Lily. The tension in the room was impossible to miss. Lily recovered first. She forced a smile that looked painfully unnatural. I was just leaving. Vanessa didn't respond. She simply stood there, composed, waiting to see what I would do. In my previous life, I would have rushed after Lily, apologizing for making her cry. This time, I remained seated. Lily. She stopped at the door. Our conversation isn't finished. Hope instantly returned to her face. Vanessa's expression remained unreadable. I'll speak with you later, I continued evenly. But from now on, you'll schedule appointments through my assistant. Lily stared at me. You're treating me like everyone else. No. I met her eyes. I'm treating you appropriately. For a heartbeat, she looked as though she had been slapped. Without another word, she walked out. The moment the door closed, silence settled over the office. Vanessa placed a folder on my desk. I came regarding tomorrow's shareholders meeting. You could have called. I wanted to see whether yesterday was real. She spoke without accusation, yet every word carried weight. I opened the folder. Projected partnership figures, joint investment proposals, expansion plans. The same documents she had brought in my previous life. Back then, I had barely glanced at them before leaving to comfort Lily. Now I read every page carefully. Vanessa watched quietly. You've actually prepared all this yourself? She gave a small nod. Our legal team assisted, but the framework is mine. It's impressive. A faint crease appeared between her brows. You've never complimented my work before. Because before, I had refused to acknowledge how extraordinary she truly was. I should have. She looked at me for several seconds. Daniel. Yes. If you're feeling guilty about yesterday, this isn't guilt. I closed the folder gently. It's respect. For the first time, a tiny crack appeared in the emotional wall she had built around herself. Not a smile. Not forgiveness. Just surprise. Before either of us spoke again, Mason knocked hurriedly. Mr. Hart. What is it? Mr. Victor Hart has arrived. My uncle. Without waiting for permission, Victor pushed the door open. His expensive smile appeared before he did. There you are. He spread his arms warmly. My favorite nephew. Everything about him looked exactly the same. Perfect suit. Perfect manners. Perfect lie. In my previous life, I had trusted him more than anyone in the family. That trust had cost me everything. He glanced toward Vanessa. I heard congratulations are in order. Thank you. She answered politely. Victor laughed. Daniel. He placed a fatherly hand on my shoulder. I was worried yesterday. Worried. Changing your mind so suddenly isn't like you. I've been thinking. His smile stiffened ever so slightly. Thinking is good. It usually is. He searched my face. You seem different. I've grown up. The words hung between us. For an instant, something calculating flashed behind his eyes. It vanished so quickly another person might have missed it. I didn't, because I had seen that same look shortly before he betrayed me in my previous life. Excellent. He patted my shoulder again. Then perhaps you'll finally listen to family. I intend to. His smile widened. Good. He left after a few more pleasantries. The office door clicked shut. Vanessa spoke quietly. You don't trust him. I turned toward her. What makes you say that? You smiled with your mouth. She folded her arms. But not your eyes. I couldn't help smiling for real this time. You notice everything. I have to. She looked toward the hallway. People like your uncle survive because everyone mistakes charm for kindness. Those words lingered in my mind. She had seen through him long before I ever had. That afternoon, the shareholders' meeting began. The conference hall overflowed with executives, investors, and board members. As expected, whispers followed every step Vanessa and I took together. Victor sat opposite me with an easy smile. Beside him sat Director Lewis, another man who had secretly sided against me in my previous life. One by one, reports concluded. Then Victor stood. I have one additional proposal. He smiled warmly toward the board. Considering Daniel's recent emotional decisions, a few directors shifted awkwardly. Perhaps we should postpone discussions regarding the Sterling partnership. Exactly. This was how he started dismantling my authority before. Slowly, publicly, making every objection seem reasonable. He continued. Business requires stability. I agree, I said calmly. Victor blinked. You do? Absolutely. He looked almost pleased. Until I continued. Which is why I'd like to review everyone's recent communications concerning Hart Group. The room became quiet. What do you mean? Victor asked. I've ordered an independent audit. His fingers tightened around his pen. An audit? Financial? I looked around the room. And internal communications. Several directors exchanged uneasy glances. Victor laughed. Surely that's unnecessary. Transparency is never unnecessary. His smile finally disappeared. Only for a moment. But I saw it. So did Vanessa. The meeting ended with polite applause that fooled no one. Every executive leaving the conference hall wore the same thoughtful expression. The balance inside Hart Group had shifted. Not dramatically. Not yet. But enough to make people reconsider who truly held control. As the directors dispersed, Victor caught up with me outside the elevators. You've become cautious. I've become responsible. He chuckled softly. Those aren't always the same thing. They should be. For several seconds we simply stood there. Then he lowered his voice. You know, I've always protected you. I remember. He smiled. I'm glad. I smiled back. So do I. His eyes searched mine again. Whatever answer he wanted. He didn't find it. When the elevator doors opened, he stepped inside without another word. Vanessa remained beside me until the doors closed. You were provoking him. I was observing him. Did you learn anything? Yes. What? He's nervous. She looked surprised. He hit it well. He always does. That evening, Vanessa invited me to Sterling Capital's headquarters to finalize the partnership proposal. Unlike Hart Group's traditional atmosphere, Sterling Capital reflected her personality. Minimalist, orderly, efficient. Employees greeted her with genuine respect rather than fear. As we reviewed contracts together, I noticed something unusual. Her assistant entered carrying 2 cups of coffee. One black, one with a single spoon of sugar. Exactly how I liked it. I frowned. You remembered? Vanessa looked up from the documents. You've always taken coffee that way. I've never told you. You didn't have to. She returned to reading. I pay attention. Such a simple sentence. Yet it struck harder than any accusation. I had spent years believing Lily understood me best. Meanwhile, Vanessa had quietly noticed details I never realized she remembered. The guilt settled heavily in my chest. Not because she blamed me, because she didn't. Near 8 that evening, Mason called. His voice was tense. Sir, we found something. I immediately stood. What is it? The audit uncovered deleted authorization logs. Whose? He hesitated. They were accessed using your executive credentials. My heartbeat slowed. In my previous life, confidential research had been leaked from my account. Everyone believed I had sold company secrets. The evidence had looked irrefutable. Exactly like this. I'm on my way. 40 minutes later, I stood inside the cybersecurity department. Large monitors displayed rows of encrypted records. The chief technician pointed toward one screen. Someone copied acquisition files 3 weeks ago. Using my login? Yes. But he enlarged another window. The login originated from another terminal. Which terminal? He swallowed. The executive guest office. I already knew who frequently used that office. Victor. Yet suspicion wasn't proof. I needed evidence. Real evidence. Just then, another technician hurried over carrying a recovered backup drive. We restored part of the deleted security footage. The room became silent. The video began playing. Timestamp. 11:48 p.m. The executive hallway appeared empty. Then a figure entered. Face hidden beneath a cap. Shoulders concealed by an oversized coat. The person stopped outside the guest office. Looked around carefully. Used an access card. Entered. 5 minutes later, the figure emerged carrying a flash drive. The face remained hidden, but one detail caught my attention. The person's right wrist. A delicate silver bracelet decorated with a tiny blue sapphire. I had seen it before. Only once. Yesterday. Around Lily Carter's wrist. Before anyone could speak, the screen suddenly flickered. The remaining footage corrupted into static. Someone had remotely erased the rest. The technician cursed under his breath. That's impossible. No, I said quietly. It means whoever did this knows we're looking. My phone vibrated. Another unknown number. Only 4 words appeared. Stop digging, Daniel. A second message arrived immediately afterward. Next time she dies. For a split second, every sound in the room disappeared. I stared at the screen as icy fear spread through my body. Not me. Vanessa. They were threatening Vanessa. Exactly as they had before. Only this time. I was still in time to stop it. The words on my phone refused to disappear. Next time she dies. My grip tightened until the edges of the device dug into my palm. Mr. Hart. The technician's voice sounded distant. Are you all right? I locked the screen immediately. I'm fine. I wasn't. The first time, I had watched Vanessa bleed in my arms while the rain washed crimson across the pavement. This time, someone already knew enough to threaten me. Which meant one thing. They were watching. I slowly looked around the cybersecurity office. Engineers. Managers. Security personnel. Anyone in this room could unknowingly become the source of another leak. Copy everything onto an offline drive, I ordered. No cloud backups. No external access. Yes, sir. As I turned to leave, Mason hurried after me. Daniel. I lowered my voice. Don't tell anyone what we recovered. Not even the board. Especially not the board. He understood immediately. If someone inside Hart Group is helping them, they'll destroy the remaining evidence. He nodded. I'll handle it. Night had already fallen when I arrived outside Sterling Capital. Vanessa was just leaving the building. She noticed my expression before I spoke. What happened? We're not driving separately. She frowned. That's not an answer. It doesn't need to be. For the first time since our engagement, I reached for her wrist. Please. She searched my face. The seriousness in my voice erased every question she wanted to ask. Without another word, she followed me into my car. Neither of us spoke until we entered the underground parking garage beneath her apartment. I checked every mirror before turning off the engine. Only then did I finally exhale. Vanessa remained calm. Now tell me. I handed her my phone. She read the message once. Then again. When she looked up, there wasn't fear in her eyes. Only concern. For you. For us. You think it's real. I know it is. She leaned back silently. Several moments passed before she spoke. This isn't the first threat you've received. It wasn't a question. No. You didn't tell me. I didn't want to drag you into it. A faint, almost amused smile crossed her lips. Daniel, I'm already in it. The truth of those words settled heavily between us. Finally she asked, what do we do? I looked straight ahead. We stop reacting. We make them react. The next morning, neither Hart Group nor Sterling Capital announced any changes. Officially, everything remained normal. Unofficially, Vanessa doubled her personal security. I quietly replaced several drivers assigned to my family. Every meeting location changed at the last minute. Only Mason and Vanessa knew the complete schedule. If information still leaked, we would know someone close to us was involved. 3 days later, the trap worked. A confidential meeting between Hart Group and an overseas investor had been deliberately entered into only one internal calendar. Mine. Within 4 hours, the investor canceled. Someone claiming to represent Hart Group had already contacted them. Mason burst into my office carrying printed emails. They knew everything. I skimmed the pages. Meeting time. Participants. Discussion topics. Every detail. Exactly as planned. Except only 3 people had known. Myself. Mason. Victor. Mason looked sick. It wasn't me. I know. His head snapped upward. You do. I trust you. Emotion flickered across his face before he regained his composure. Then, he didn't finish. He didn't have to. We were thinking the same name. Victor. Yet something still felt wrong. Too obvious. Victor was intelligent. He wouldn't expose himself so carelessly. Unless someone wanted us to suspect him. The thought lingered long after Mason left. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor. An elderly man wearing a simple navy jacket introduced himself at reception. My name is Samuel Brooks. I worked for Sterling Industries. Vanessa happened to be reviewing contracts in my office. The moment she heard his name, she stood. Mr. Brooks. He smiled warmly. You still remember me. You trained half our finance department. He laughed. I was old even then. After tea was served, his expression gradually became serious. I wasn't planning to interfere. He looked toward me. But after hearing about your engagement, I think it's time someone told you the truth. Vanessa frowned. What truth? Samuel removed an old envelope from his briefcase. Inside were faded photographs, receipts, medical bills, and a handwritten ledger. My heartbeat quickened. I don't understand. He looked at me gently. 10 years ago, your father's company nearly collapsed. I nodded. I know. No. You know the public story. He slid one receipt across the table. Loan documents. Signed. By Richard Sterling, Vanessa's father. My eyes widened. My father always said the banks helped. Samuel shook his head. The banks refused. Your father begged everywhere. No one wanted the risk. He smiled sadly. So Richard Sterling quietly mortgaged part of his own company. Vanessa stared at the papers. My father never told me. He didn't want either family to feel indebted. Samuel sighed. They agreed to keep it secret. My chest tightened. The Hart family had survived because of the Sterlings. Yet I had spent years believing Vanessa's family wanted to seize our business. Exactly the lie Lily had whispered into my ears. Exactly the lie Victor had subtly encouraged. Every memory suddenly felt poisoned. Samuel wasn't finished. There was another condition. He handed me a folded letter. The handwriting belonged to my late father. I recognized it instantly. Richard, if our children ever choose each other willingly, bless them. If they don't, never force them. The ink blurred before my eyes. This wasn't an arranged marriage born from greed. It had been a promise between two lifelong friends. A promise built on gratitude, not obligation. Vanessa remained motionless. I never knew. Samuel smiled softly. Your father honored the agreement. He always said marriage without choice becomes resentment. Silence filled the office. I folded the letter carefully. So all these years. Samuel nodded. Someone benefited from making both families distrust each other. After Samuel left, Vanessa walked to the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the city. I've spent years believing your family looked down on mine. I believed yours wanted control. She laughed quietly. What a waste. There was no bitterness in her voice. Only sadness. I joined her. I'm going to fix it. She looked at me. You can't fix the past. No. But I can stop repeating it. For the first time, she smiled. A genuine one. Small. Warm. Beautiful. It disappeared almost immediately. But it was real. That evening, as I drove home alone, headlights suddenly appeared behind me. One vehicle, then another. Both remained exactly the same distance away. Every turn, every traffic light, every lane change. They followed. I calmly reached for the emergency phone Mason had insisted I carry. They're here. His voice became sharp. Keep driving. Don't stop. I headed toward the nearest police district instead of home. The two vehicles continued following. 3 blocks away. They accelerated. One swerved alongside me. The other moved behind. A trap. My pulse remained steady. Not because I wasn't afraid. Because I'd already died once. The rear vehicle rammed my bumper. Metal screamed. The steering wheel jerked violently. Another impact. Harder. People on the sidewalk shouted. I accelerated toward the brightly lit police station ahead. Suddenly, a black SUV burst from a side street. Instead of blocking me, it slammed directly into the pursuing sedan. Glass exploded across the intersection. The second vehicle spun out of control and struck a traffic barrier. My car finally screeched to a halt inside the police station entrance. Officers rushed outside with weapons drawn. The attackers fled on foot, disappearing into nearby alleys before police could catch them. Breathing heavily, I stepped from the damaged vehicle. The driver of the black SUV climbed out as well. Tall, broad-shouldered, late 30s. A scar crossed one side of his jaw. He walked toward me. You must be Daniel Hart. I am. He extended a hand. Marcus Cole. Private security. Miss Sterling hired me yesterday. I stared at him. She what? Marcus glanced toward my crushed rear bumper. Looks like she made the right decision. My phone rang. Vanessa. I answered immediately. Are you hurt? Her voice was calm, but I could hear the fear hidden beneath it. I'm all right. There was a long silence. Then she quietly said, I had a bad feeling. So I hired protection without telling you. I closed my eyes for a brief moment. In my previous life, she had always been protecting me, even when I never noticed. I owe you another apology. No. Her voice softened. You owe me dinner. Despite everything. I laughed. For the first time in days. Across the street, Marcus was already studying the wrecked vehicles. After several minutes, he crouched beside one abandoned sedan and picked something up with a gloved hand. A security access card, burned around the edges. He walked over and handed it to me. The logo printed on it made my expression freeze. Hart Group Executive Access. Someone inside my own company hadn't just been leaking information. They had just tried to kill me. And this time, they had made a mistake they couldn't erase. The scorched access card lay on my desk beneath the white glow of a single lamp. Marcus stood with his arms folded. Mason paced quietly. Vanessa sat across from me, reading every line engraved on the damaged card. Executive Level 3, she said. It wasn't issued to an ordinary employee. Marcus nodded. Someone wanted the fire to destroy it. It didn't. I turned the card over. Part of the identification number remained intact. Not enough to identify the owner directly. Enough to narrow the list. Mason looked up from his laptop. There are only 12 active cards matching this series. Can they be duplicated? They shouldn't be. Marcus spoke before Mason could answer. They can. Everyone looked at him. I spent 12 years in military intelligence. He pointed toward the card. This wasn't stolen. It was cloned. The room fell silent. That changed everything. If someone had copied executive credentials, anyone could be framed. Just as I had been in my previous life. Vanessa slowly closed the file in front of her. Then we're chasing shadows. No. I stood. We're chasing the person who made the copies. 2 days later, Hart Group announced an internal cybersecurity upgrade. Officially, it was routine maintenance. Unofficially, Marcus supervised every entrance personally. Nobody complained. Except one person. Victor. He entered my office wearing his usual pleasant smile. My own company requires me to register with security now. I looked up from a report. Everyone registers. He laughed. You've become suspicious. I've become careful. He leaned against my desk. I heard someone attacked you. I was fortunate. Very. His sympathy sounded flawless. Too flawless. He glanced toward Marcus. And who is this? My security director. Marcus didn't even bother offering his hand. Victor smiled anyway. I suppose that's necessary now. As he turned to leave, Marcus spoke calmly. Mr. Hart. Victor paused. You favor your left leg. Victor frowned slightly. Old sports injury. Marcus nodded. Interesting. Victor left without another word. The door closed. I looked at Marcus. What was that? Marcus walked to the window. The driver who rammed your car limped. You think? I think people rarely fake lifelong habits. That afternoon, another surprise arrived. The police recovered one abandoned phone from the attack. Its fingerprint lock had failed after water damage. Most of the data was corrupted, except for one photograph. Marcus enlarged the image on the conference screen. A warehouse. Stacks of shipping containers. One corner of the photo included a wall calendar. The date. 3 weeks earlier. Standing beside one container. Lily. And Victor. Neither noticed the camera. Victor handed her a flash drive. She accepted it with both hands. No affection. No romance. Just business. Vanessa inhaled sharply. So they were working together. I thought so. But this still isn't enough. Marcus nodded. It proves contact. Not conspiracy. I stared at the frozen image. Something bothered me. Lily wasn't smiling. She looked frightened. Very frightened. Instead of confronting her, I waited. People under pressure revealed more than people under accusation. The opportunity came sooner than expected. That evening Lily appeared outside Hart Group. She looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. The confidence she once wore had almost disappeared. I only need 5 minutes. Marcus glanced toward me. I nodded. We met in a nearby cafe rather than my office. She wrapped both hands around a cup of untouched tea. I know you hate me. I don't. She looked surprised. I don't hate you. I just don't trust you. Tears welled in her eyes. They'll kill me. I remained silent. She looked around nervously. They said if I told anyone. Her voice broke. My mother would disappear. This wasn't the performance I'd seen before. Her hands were trembling uncontrollably. Marcus, seated several tables away, subtly watched every entrance. Who are they? I can't. Lily. I leaned forward. You already know what they're capable of. She covered her face. I never wanted anyone to die. The word struck me like ice. Who died? Her breathing stopped. She hadn't meant to say it. I asked quietly. My father's accident. She slowly lowered her hands. You know? My heartbeat thundered. Father's death had officially been ruled mechanical failure. No evidence. No suspects. Just tragedy. Lily whispered through tears. It wasn't an accident. The cafe suddenly felt too small. Every sound faded beneath the pounding in my ears. What did you say? Lily stared at the table. They tampered with his car. Marcus discreetly stood and locked the front entrance while pretending to speak with the manager. No one entered. No one left. Lily. My voice remained calm despite the rage threatening to break free. Tell me everything. She nodded weakly. I met Victor 2 years ago. He knew my mother needed expensive treatment. He offered to help. In return, she couldn't finish. You convinced me Vanessa was manipulating you. You leaked information. You pushed me toward breaking the engagement. She cried harder. I thought it was only business. I swear. They said nobody would get hurt. When your father discovered missing financial records, they panicked. I felt the blood drain from my face. My father found them. She nodded. He confronted Victor. What happened next? I don't know. They never let me near him again. Marcus quietly activated the recorder in his watch. Every word was now preserved. Then Lily whispered the sentence that changed everything. They aren't just stealing Heart Group. They're laundering money through it. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. How much? I don't know. But foreign shell companies. Fake acquisitions. Construction contracts. She described details no outsider should have known. Enough to justify a criminal investigation. Marcus immediately texted someone. Within seconds, he looked back at me. My contacts confirmed it. There has been a federal investigation into one of those shell companies for months. Victor wasn't merely after Heart Group. He had turned it into a financial pipeline. My father's death, the leaked research, the attacks, everything suddenly connected. The following morning, I requested an emergency board meeting. Every director attended. Victor entered confidently. So serious? He smiled toward the room. I wonder what today's surprise will be. I met his eyes. You'll find out. The projector illuminated the screen. Financial transfers, security logs, recovered emails, surveillance photographs, one piece after another. The directors exchanged increasingly alarmed looks. Victor laughed. Circumstantial. I nodded. It is. So let's continue. Marcus entered carrying sealed evidence bags. The cloned access card. Recovered flash drives. The attackers' abandoned phones. Still, Victor remained composed. Then the conference room doors opened again. Everyone turned. Lily walked inside. Her face was pale, but she didn't stop. She walked straight to the center of the room. Victor's smile disappeared for the first time. Lily. His voice became dangerously soft. What are you doing? She looked directly at him. For the first time, I'm telling the truth. The room fell silent. She confessed everything. Every payment. Every meeting. Every lie she had been instructed to spread. Every forged document she had delivered. Every threat against her family. When she finished, no one spoke. Victor slowly stood. Then, he applauded. Calmly. Mockingly. Remarkable. He smiled at every director. You're believing a frightened woman trying to save herself. Several directors hesitated. Exactly as he expected. He turned toward me. Do you really think you've won? I reached beneath the table and pressed a single button on my laptop. A large screen behind him came alive. Video footage. Crystal clear. Not the damaged recording. A different one. Marcus had recovered it from the warehouse's independent security server the previous night. The entire room watched in stunned silence. Victor handing Lily confidential files. Victor discussing the removal of obstacles. Victor saying the words. If Daniel refuses, accidents happen. The recording ended. No one moved. No one breathed. Director Lewis slowly removed his glasses. His voice shook. I've been signing documents you prepared for years. Victor looked around the room. For the first time in decades, no one stood beside him. Outside, police sirens echoed through the streets. Marcus calmly opened the conference room door. Federal investigators entered first. Police detectives followed. One investigator unfolded an arrest warrant. Victor Hart, you're under arrest for fraud, conspiracy, money laundering, corporate espionage, and suspicion of involvement in multiple homicides. Victor looked at me one last time. There was no anger left. Only disbelief. You were never this clever. I met his gaze steadily. No. I just stopped trusting the wrong people. As officers placed him in handcuffs, the empire he had spent years building collapsed around him. Not because I destroyed it, but because the truth finally had nowhere left to hide. The media storm began before Victor's police convoy left the Hart Group headquarters. Satellite trucks lined both sides of the street. Reporters shouted questions over one another. Was the chairman's brother really behind the fraud? Did Hart Group know about the money laundering? What happens to the Sterling partnership now? Marcus opened the car door for Vanessa and me. We should leave through the underground exit. I shook my head. No. Vanessa glanced at me. You're sure? For years, people watched lies spread about us. I looked toward the cameras. They deserved to see us walk out together. She understood immediately. Without hesitation, she stepped beside me. Neither of us spoke to the press. We simply walked through the crowd, shoulder to shoulder. Calm. Steady. No dramatic declarations. No celebration. Sometimes silence carried more weight than words. The next morning, Hart Group stock dropped nearly 12% before the market stabilized. Investors panicked. Partners hesitated. Employees feared mass layoffs. Instead of hiding in my office, I walked directly onto the main operations floor. Hundreds of employees stopped working as I entered. Some looked anxious, others embarrassed. Many simply looked tired. I stepped onto the small platform usually reserved for company announcements. My uncle betrayed this company. No one spoke. He also betrayed every employee who believed their hard work mattered. Several people lowered their heads. I won't pretend nothing happened. I won't ask you to forget. But I promise you this. I looked across the room. No innocent employee will lose their job because of his crimes. Whispers spread through the crowd. The people responsible will face justice. The people who built this company honestly will build its future. A woman near the front quietly began clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire floor echoed with applause. Not because everything had been fixed, because someone had finally taken responsibility. After the meeting, Mason caught up with me. You've got 300 resignation letters. I smiled faintly. From employees? He laughed. No. From executives trying to distance themselves from Victor. Accept the guilty ones. The innocent. Interview them. No assumptions. No witch hunt. He nodded. Understood. For the first time in years, Hart Group wasn't ruled by fear. 3 days later, I visited the cemetery alone. Rain drifted gently across rows of polished headstones. My father's grave stood beneath an old oak tree. Fresh white lilies rested against the stone. Someone had already been there. I knelt quietly. Dad, the words caught in my throat. In another life. I failed. I trusted the wrong people. I lost everything. I even lost her. My fingers brushed the cool granite. I can't change what happened, but I can honor what you believed. Footsteps approached softly behind me. I didn't turn. I thought I might find you here. Vanessa stood beneath a black umbrella. She placed another bouquet beside the grave. My father used to bring flowers every year. She smiled sadly. He never forgot the friend who saved his dreams. I looked at her. I never even knew. You weren't supposed to. We stood in silence while the rain continued falling. Finally, she asked, do you still blame yourself? Every day. She shook her head gently. Regret can teach. But if you keep living inside it, you'll never notice the future waiting outside. Her words lingered long after we left the cemetery. Several weeks passed. Investigations continued. Victor remained in custody. More financial crimes surfaced almost daily. Yet something unexpected happened. Hart Group began recovering. Employees worked together instead of competing. Departments once divided by politics started sharing information. The atmosphere felt lighter. One afternoon, Mason entered my office carrying a thin folder. Lily Carter. I looked up. What about her? She requested a meeting. I remained silent for a moment. Send her in. She entered looking almost unrecognizable. The expensive clothes were gone. She wore a simple blouse and carried herself with quiet humility. There was no performance. No forced tears. Only exhaustion. She sat without being asked. I wanted to thank you. For what? You kept your promise. My mother was moved into witness protection. I nodded. She'll be safe. She looked down at her hands. I spent years believing I was powerless. I told myself I had no choice. She gave a bitter smile. But every small compromise became a bigger one, until I couldn't recognize myself. The room remained quiet. Finally, she placed an envelope on my desk. My full written statement. There are names in there the investigators haven't found yet. I accepted it. Thank you. She stood. At the door she hesitated. I really did care about you. I know. Tears filled her eyes again. I just wasn't brave enough to become someone worthy of that feeling. She left without looking back. I watched the closed door for several moments. There was no satisfaction, no triumph, only acceptance. Some people weren't born villains. They simply kept choosing fear over courage until they forgot the difference. That evening, Sterling Capital hosted a charity gala raising funds for vocational scholarships. Unlike previous events, there were no rumors surrounding Vanessa and me. No whispers. No speculation. People simply accepted what they saw. Partners. Standing together. During the auction, Vanessa quietly nudged my arm. Look. A teenage boy nervously accepted a scholarship certificate on stage. His father wore a driver's uniform. The resemblance to Lily's past struck me immediately. Vanessa noticed my expression. Opportunity shouldn't depend on someone's last name. I smiled. That's something my father would have agreed with. So would mine. After the ceremony ended, we stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city skyline. Warm lights stretched endlessly beneath the night sky. Vanessa rested her hands lightly on the railing. When all this started, I thought we'd spend our lives cleaning up someone else's mess. And now, she looked at the bustling streets below. Now I think we can finally build something instead. I reached into my pocket. She raised an eyebrow. Another ring? I laughed. No. I held out a small brass key. She looked puzzled. What's this? The old workshop behind Heart Group. My father used to sketch business ideas there. I restored it. For us. She turned the key over in her hand. A place with no board meetings. No reporters. No politics. Just ideas. A genuine smile spread across her face. I'd like that. For the first time since receiving a second chance, I realized something important. My new life wasn't defined by avoiding old mistakes. It was defined by creating things the old life had never allowed. The weight of regret no longer rested on my shoulders. Ahead lay work, purpose, and a future we would shape together, one honest decision at a time. Autumn arrived quietly. 3 months had passed since Victor Hart's arrest. The headlines that once screamed scandal had slowly given way to ordinary business news. For the first time in years, Hart Group's quarterly report was discussed because of its performance, not because of controversy. I stood outside courtroom 7 with Marcus and Mason. The final hearing was about to begin. Marcus adjusted his tie. He's been trying to negotiate. I heard. Reduced sentence in exchange for information. I nodded. It won't erase what he did. The courtroom doors opened. Victor entered under escort. He looked older. Not because of prison. Because he no longer had control. His perfectly groomed appearance had disappeared. His expensive confidence had vanished with it. When his eyes found me, he smiled faintly. Daniel. The guards allowed him a brief conversation before proceedings began. You've won. I didn't come to win. No. He laughed quietly. I built this family. You exploited it. I protected it. You protected yourself. His smile faded. You still think life is that simple? No. It's far more complicated. I looked at him steadily. That's why people have to choose honesty before complexity gives them excuses. For a moment, he looked almost disappointed. You sound like your father. I hope so. The judge entered. The courtroom rose. Hours of testimony followed. Financial experts. Investigators. Former employees. Every lie that had taken years to construct unraveled beneath evidence and sworn statements. Then Lily was called. She walked to the witness stand without hesitation. She answered every question clearly. She never minimized her own guilt. She never exaggerated anyone else's. When the prosecutor finished, Victor's attorney stood. You expect this court to believe you're suddenly an honest person? Lily lowered her eyes briefly. No. I expect the court to believe the evidence. I've lied before. That's exactly why I won't lie today. Silence settled across the courtroom. Even the attorney had no immediate reply. Late that afternoon, the verdict was delivered. Victor Hart was found guilty on all major charges. Money laundering, corporate espionage, fraud, conspiracy, accessory to homicide. The sentence was severe. As officers escorted him away, he stopped beside me one last time. I spent years planning everything. He smiled bitterly. You ruined it in a few months. I shook my head. No, you ruined it. The day you decided everyone else existed for your benefit. He stared at me for several long seconds. Then he lowered his head. For the first time, he had nothing left to say. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward us again. This time I stopped. One microphone was held out. Mr. Hart, what message would you like the public to remember after today's verdict? I looked toward the courthouse doors, then at the crowd. Companies recover. Families recover. Even trust can recover. I paused, but only after someone chooses to tell the truth. I stepped away without answering another question. No dramatic speech was necessary. The truth had already spoken for itself. Winter's first snowfall covered the old workshop behind Hart Group in a blanket of white. The brass key I had given Vanessa months earlier hung beside the restored wooden door. Inside, the space had transformed. The dusty shelves were now filled with design sketches, engineering models, and handwritten notebooks. A large table occupied the center of the room. Half belonged to Hart Group. Half belonged to Sterling Capital. No logos. No hierarchy. Just ideas. Vanessa looked up from a blueprint as I entered. You're late. Traffic. She smiled knowingly. You were buying coffee. I laughed. You still notice everything. I always will. I placed 2 cups on the table. One black. One with a single spoon of sugar. She raised an eyebrow. You remembered. I pay attention. She smiled, recognizing her own words from months before. We spent the afternoon discussing a new foundation jointly funded by both companies. Its purpose was simple: provide scholarships, startup grants, and vocational training to young people whose opportunities had been limited by circumstance rather than ability. The first program would be named after our fathers, not because they had been perfect, because they had believed generosity should never demand recognition. As evening approached, Marcus stopped by the workshop. They're ready. Vanessa and I followed him outside. Near the entrance stood dozens of employees from both companies. Some carried shovels. Others held small, evergreen saplings. Mason stepped forward. We thought this place needed something. What? He pointed toward the open field behind the workshop. A beginning. Together, everyone planted the trees. No speeches. No photographers. Just laughter, cold air, and honest work. When the last sapling stood upright, the sun dipped below the horizon. Golden light spread across the snow-covered ground. Vanessa slipped her hand into mine. This feels peaceful. It does. She looked toward the young trees. They'll outlive us. I hope so. So will what we build. I thought back to the ballroom where my second life had begun. One decision. One different choice. In another lifetime, I had mistaken manipulation for love and sacrifice for loyalty. This time, I had learned that trust was earned through actions, not words. Walking away from the wrong people had never been revenge. It had simply made room for the right ones. The wind carried the scent of pine through the evening air. Employees laughed in the distance. Marcus and Mason argued playfully over whose tree would grow fastest. Vanessa rested her head lightly against my shoulder. Neither of us needed to speak. Some endings didn't require grand declarations. They only required peace. As snow continued to fall over the quiet workshop and the newly planted trees, I realized that my greatest victory had never been exposing those who betrayed me. It had been becoming the kind of man who no longer needed their approval. The past had given me regret. My second chance had given me wisdom. The future, at last, belonged to us.